The first time my office rival told me she'd been losing to me on purpose for a year, she had a cue stick in one hand, chalk dust on her knuckles, and a look on her face like she'd finally set down something. She'd been carrying so long she'd forgotten it was heavy. But that came later. It started with the shot she said she couldn't make. My name is Marcus Hale. I was 33 years old, a senior account strategist at a mid-sized marketing firm in Cincinnati, and by that point in my life I had gotten very good at winning arguments I didn't actually care about winning. I could dismantle a client's objection without raising my voice. I could rebuild a failing pitch overnight and hand it back looking like it had never been broken. What I could not do, what I had never once managed in the 2 years I'd worked beside her, was figure out Nora Vance. Nora was 31, a senior account strategist too, which was the whole problem. Same title, same floor, same clients half the time, and a rivalry so well established that people in other departments knew about it. She had dark hair she wore twisted up with a pen through it when she was concentrating, a way of tilting her head when she thought you were wrong that could make a grown man question his own name, and a habit of ending every disagreement with the phrase "we'll see." She said it like a verdict. She said it to me at least twice a week. We competed over everything. Accounts, corner desks, whose campaign the creative director praised first in the Monday meeting. Once we argued for 40 minutes about whether a headline needed a comma, and neither of us backed down, and the comma stayed, and I still don't know who won. That was Nora. Sharp, relentless, impossible to read, and, though I would have chewed glass before admitting it, the only person in that building who made the job feel like it mattered. I told myself I found her exhausting. That was easier than the truth. The truth was that I noticed things. I noticed she drank her coffee black until a deadline, then loaded it with sugar like she was bracing for war. I noticed she remembered the name of the night janitor, Reuben, and asked about his daughter's recital. I noticed that when she laughed, really laughed, not the polished conference room version, she pressed the back of her hand to her mouth like she was embarrassed by it. I noticed all of it, and then I filed it somewhere I didn't look because noticing your rival is a good way to lose to her. So I kept score instead. That was safer. On the Fenwick account, I came in under budget. She landed the bigger client. On the Delacroix rebrand, she nailed the tagline. I saved the timeline when the printer collapsed. Back and forth, month after month, a rivalry so balanced it felt almost engineered. I used to think that was luck. I used to think we were just evenly matched. I was wrong about that too. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It was a Thursday in October when the whole thing tipped over. We just lost the Harlan pitch, both of us together on the same team for once, which happened maybe twice a year and always ended badly. The client had gone with a flashier agency out of Chicago. Our creative director, Diane, had given us the tight-lipped "we'll regroup Monday" that meant she was disappointed and trying not to show it. The office emptied out fast the way offices do after a loss. Everyone suddenly remembering somewhere else to be. I was still at my desk at 6:30, staring at the pitch deck we'd spent 3 weeks building, when a shadow fell across my monitor. "You're brooding," Nora said. "I'm reviewing." "You're brooding at a slideshow." "It's over, Hale." They picked the agency with the drone footage. The drone footage was gratuitous. It was gratuitous and it worked. That's the worst kind. She dropped into the chair beside my desk uninvited, which she did about as often as she agreed with me, which was to say almost never. Up close, she looked tired in a way she never let herself look during the day. The pen was out of her hair. It hung loose around her shoulders, and I made a point of looking back at my screen. "Go home, Nora." "I don't want to go home." Something in the way she said it made me turn. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the dead pitch on my monitor with an expression I couldn't name, and for a second the sharpness was just gone, like a light switched off. "There's a place 2 blocks over," she said. "Sully's, pool tables in the back. Terrible beer. I go when I lose." "You never lose." "I lose all the time." She stood, grabbed her coat off the back of the chair, and looked down at me with the old challenge sliding back into place like armor going on. "Come on. You owe me a rematch anyway." "For what?" "For the comma." The comma stayed. I won the comma. "We'll see," she said. And because I was tired, and because we'd lost, and because I had never in 2 years figured out how to say no to that particular tilt of her head, I closed the laptop and went. Sully's was exactly what she'd promised. Low ceilings, a jukebox that only played songs older than both of us. A bartender named Gus who greeted Nora by name, which surprised me more than it should have. The back room had 2 pool tables under hanging lamps. The felt worn pail in the middle from 1,000 games. It smelled like chalk and old beer and something warmer underneath, the particular coziness of a place that doesn't care what you do for a living. "You come here a lot," I said. It wasn't a question. Define a lot. She was already racking the balls, her movements quick and practiced, the triangle set and lifted away in one clean motion. I come here when the building gets loud. The building's an office. It's mostly quiet. Not that kind of loud. She chalked her cue and didn't explain, and I let it go, because I was learning that Nora gave you information the way a client gave you budget. Reluctantly, and only when you stopped asking. We played. And here's the thing you need to understand about that first game. I won, but I shouldn't have. I'm a decent pool player. Not great. Nora, it turned out, was extraordinary. She read the table like she read a room, 3 moves ahead. The geometry already solved behind her eyes. She sank 2 on the break, ran a tidy sequence, and then, on a shot she had absolutely no business missing, an easy straight line to the corner pocket, she scratched. Sent the cue ball skittering off into nothing. Rough luck, I said. She said. I won that game and the next. Both times, she was better than me right up until the moment she wasn't. And both times the miss came at exactly the point where losing was still possible. I noticed it the way I noticed everything about her, quietly, and then set it aside. I thought she was rusty. I thought she was tired. I thought a lot of things that weren't the real one. By the third game, she'd stopped pretending to be casual. She leaned over the table, sighted down the cue, and I watched her actually try, and it was like watching someone take off a coat they'd been wearing indoors all day. She ran 5 balls without stopping. I didn't get a single turn. When she sank the 8 ball, she straightened up and looked at me with something almost like relief. There she is, I said. What? You, playing to win. I was starting to think you didn't know how. Her jaw tightened. For a second I thought I'd stepped on something, and then she said, too quickly, best of 5. I'm up 1 now. You're down 2. I'm up in the game that matters. What game is that? We'll see, she said, and racked again, and I let it go again. And that was the pattern of the whole night. Nora saying almost things and me pretending not to hear the space around them. Somewhere in the 4th game, the sharpness softened into something else. We stopped keeping score out loud. Gus brought over 2 of the terrible beers without being asked. The jukebox played something slow and old, and Nora hummed along without seeming to notice she was doing it. And I did notice, and I filed it away with everything else. She told me about the Harlan pitch. How she'd known by minute 4 the client wasn't with us. How she'd watched the man's eyes drift to his phone and known it was gone, and had to keep smiling for 20 more minutes anyway. I told her I'd known it too. We laughed about it, the specific gallows laugh of 2 people who'd built something good and watched it die in a conference room. You know what I hate? She said, chalking her cue, not looking at me. I hate that we're better together. We're not together. We were on the same team for 1 pitch. That's what I mean. She lined up a shot, took it, missed, and this time I couldn't tell if she meant to. 2 years of trying to beat you, and the one time they put us on the same side, we build the best thing either of us has ever made, and they still pick the drones. She shook her head. It's a bad joke. So, we lost. We didn't lose because we were bad, Marcus. It was the first time she'd used my first name all night. It landed differently than Hale. We lost because the world's got terrible taste. Those are not the same thing. I didn't have a response to that. So I did the thing I always do when I don't have a response. I changed the subject to something I could win. 1 more game, I said. Real stakes this time. Whoever wins gets the Ashford account. She laughed. You can't bet an account. Diane assigns those. Then we bet bragging rights. Lozer admits in writing that the other one is the superior strategist. In writing. Her eyes lit up. This was our native language, this kind of ridiculous escalation. Notarized? Emailed. CC the whole floor. You're on. She racked the balls one last time, and there was something looser in her now. The tiredness burned off, replaced by the version of her I only ever saw across a table when she'd forgotten to be careful. But if I'm putting my professional reputation on the line, so are you. Same stakes both ways. Same stakes. We played the best game either of us played all night. Neck and neck, no charity misses, no pulled shots. Just 2 people who were very good at something refusing to let the other one have it. It came down to the 8 ball, as those games always do. I was up. She had 1 shot to tie it, a brutal angle, the 8 tucked near the rail with the cue ball trapped behind a cluster. There was no clean line. Anyone would have missed it. I'd already started composing the email in my head. Nora chalked her cue slowly, studied the table. And then she looked up at me, and the challenge in her face had changed to something I'd never seen there before. Something that made my heart do a slow, hard turn in my chest. New stakes, she said quietly. You can't change the stakes mid-game. I can if you agree. She held my eyes. The jukebox had gone quiet between songs. Gus was wiping down glasses at the far end of the bar, out of earshot. It was just us, and the green felt and the low gold light of the hanging lamp. Okay, I heard myself say. What are the new stakes? She looked down at the impossible shot. Then, back at me. If I sink this, Nora said, you owe me a kiss. The room got very still. For a second, I was sure I'd misheard. 2 years of commas and corner desks, and we'll see. And now she was leaning over a pool table in a dive bar telling me. I ran the sentence back twice, and it said the same thing both times. That's not a real bet, I said, and my voice came out rougher than I meant it to. That shot's impossible. You'll miss. Probably. Her hand was steady on the cue. Mine, resting on the rail, was not. So it's a safe bet for you. You lose nothing. Or, she said, it's the only bet I've had the nerve to make in a year. And she took the shot. I have watched a lot of people do a lot of impressive things. I have watched a designer rebuild a corrupted file from memory at 4 in the morning. I have watched Diane talk a client off a ledge with nothing but her voice. But I have never, before or since, seen anything like the shot Nora Vance made in the back of Sully's on that Thursday night. The cue ball threaded the cluster like it had somewhere to be. It kissed the rail, doubled back at an angle that shouldn't have existed, and clipped the 8-ball so gently that for a heartbeat, nothing happened at all. Then the 8 rolled, slow, certain, inevitable, and dropped into the corner pocket with a sound like a door closing. Neither of us moved. Nora straightened up. She set the cue against the table with exaggerated care, like she needed something to do with her hands. And when she finally looked at me, the bravado was gone, and what was left underneath was so much more frightening. She looked terrified. She looked like she'd jumped off something high and was still waiting to find out if there was water at the bottom. So, she said. Her voice had lost all its edges. You owe me a kiss. Nora, you don't have to. The words came out fast, all in a rush, like she'd rehearsed the retreat before the advance. It was a stupid bet. I've had one beer and we lost the pitch, and I'm not. You can say it was a joke. I'll say it was a joke. We can go back to normal. We can argue about a comma on Monday and I'll never. Nora. She stopped. I came around the table, slowly giving her every chance to step back, to laugh, to turn it into the joke she'd offered us both a door toward. She didn't step back. She stood very still under the gold light with her chin lifted in that way she had, brave and scared at the same time, and when I stopped in front of her, she had to tilt her head up to keep my eyes, and I finally understood the tilt. 2 years of that tilt. It had never been condescension. It had been this. You've been throwing our games, I said. It wasn't what I'd planned to say. It just came out. All night. The easy misses. You've been throwing games to me for 2 years, haven't you? Her breath caught. The rivalry's real, I went on, because now that I'd started, I couldn't stop, the whole architecture of the last 2 years rearranging itself in front of me. The comma was real, but you let me win just enough. You kept it close on purpose, so we'd stay. I stopped, so we'd stay at the table. Marcus. Her eyes were bright. Please don't be smart right now. I have exactly one nerve left and you're standing on it. So I stopped being smart. I lifted my hand, slow, careful, giving her the whole world to move away in, and I tucked the loose hair back from her face the way I'd wanted to do across 100 conference tables, and her eyes fell shut, and I kissed her. It was not a triumphant kiss. It was not the kiss you'd script for two rivals finally cracking open. It was careful and unsteady, and asked a question with every second of it, and Nora answered by curling her fingers into the front of my shirt and holding on like she'd been waiting a long time to have something to hold. She tasted like the terrible beer and something warmer underneath, and when she made a small sound against my mouth, 2 years of keeping score went quiet all at once. When we finally broke apart, she didn't step back. She kept her forehead against my chin, her fingers still fisted in my shirt, and I could feel her heart going hard through both our clothes. That was not a joke, she whispered. No. I've been trying to say it for a year and I couldn't find the door, she laughed shakily. So I turned it into a bet. Because I know how to win bets. I don't know how to just say things. You said it. I sank an impossible shot to avoid saying it, Marcus. That's not the same as saying it. I put my hand over hers where it gripped my shirt. Then say it now. No bet. No shot. Just say it. She pulled back enough to look at me. And I watched Nora Vance, who could take apart any argument in the building, who ended every fight with a verdict, who I had never once seen at a loss for words, struggle to find the smallest true one. I like you, she said finally, and winced. God, that's so. I like you, Marcus. I have liked you since the Fenwick account when you gave me the client and told Diane it was your idea to hand it off. I have spent 2 years being awful to you, because being awful to you was the only way I could think of to be near you every single day and not have to admit what it was. I stared at her. The Fenwick client, I said slowly. I didn't hand that off. You outbid me for it. I let you think I outbid you. She wiped at her eyes, half laughing, half not. You'd already told Diane you wanted me to have it. I heard you. Through the door. You said I'd do more with it than you would. Her voice wobbled. Nobody had ever. You gave me the best account of the year and made it look like I took it from you, so I wouldn't feel like I owed you anything. And I went home and I thought, I am in so much trouble. You've hated me for 2 years. I have been terrified of you for 2 years. She laughed for real then, wet and unguarded, the back of her hand coming up to her mouth the way it always did. There's a difference. You just couldn't tell, because I'm very good at my job. We didn't go home that night. Not together. Nothing like that. We stayed at Sully's until Gus started stacking chairs and we talked. Really talked for the first time in 2 years, with none of the armor on. It turned out we'd been having half a conversation the whole time. All those arguments about commas and campaigns had been the only channel either of us had, and now that the real channel was open, everything came pouring through it. She told me about the scorecard. That was the part that undid me. I keep one, she said. We were sitting on 2 stools at the end of the bar, her coat around her shoulders, the pool tables dark now behind us. In my desk, bottom drawer under the client files. A scorecard for what? Us. She wouldn't quite look at me. Every account, every meeting. Who won what? I've kept it since the Fenwick thing. She turned her beer glass in a slow circle on the bar. I told myself it was strategy. Know your competition. But that's not. She stopped. Every time you won something, I wrote it down. And every time I let you win something, I wrote that down too, in a different color. So I'd remember it was on purpose. So I'd remember I was choosing to keep it close and not actually losing my edge. You color-coded your feelings for me. I color-code everything, Marcus. It's a serious problem. She finally looked up, and there was something raw in it. The green ones are real losses. The blue ones are the ones I threw. There are a lot of blue ones. I didn't know what to say to that. So I told her the truth, which I was learning I could do now, apparently, out loud to her face. I have a folder, I said, on my work drive. It's called Vance Notes. Her eyebrows went up. Competitive intelligence. That's what I told myself. It's supposed to be like how you argue, what accounts you go after, so I can beat you. I rubbed the back of my neck. It's mostly not that. What's it mostly? It's mostly things you said that I didn't want to forget. There's a note from 8 months ago that just says, she takes her coffee black until a deadline. I don't know why I wrote that down. I've never known why I wrote that down. Nora put her hand over her mouth. There's another one, I said, because I was in it now, that says, asks Ruben about the recital, and one that says, I stopped because this one was harder. One that says, the hand thing when she laughs. The hand thing. You put the back of your hand over your mouth when it's a real laugh. You did it 30 seconds ago. I shook my head. I've been keeping a scorecard too. I just called mine something else so I wouldn't have to look at it. She was quiet for a long moment. The jukebox had gone silent. Gus was somewhere in the back, giving us, I suspected, more time than the bar strictly stayed open for. We're the same kind of coward, Nora said softly. You know that? Exactly the same. You gave me an account and dressed it up as a rivalry. I threw pool games and dressed it up as being tired. 2 years. We could have been. She stopped. 2 years, Marcus. Why now? I asked. You had 100 chances. Why tonight? She was quiet for a moment, turning her glass. Because we lost the Harlan pitch together, she said finally. And I watched us build something good and watch them throw it away, and I thought, I do this. This is the thing I do. I build something good and I don't fight for it because I'm scared it'll get thrown away anyway. So I keep it safe and small and close instead of just, she exhaled. I've been throwing pool games to you for 2 years for the exact same reason I let Harlan drift after minute 4. Because if I never really try, I never really lose. And I got so tired of it tonight, Marcus. I got so tired of losing on purpose. I didn't say anything. I didn't trust myself to. My last relationship, she went on, and now she wasn't looking at me at all. He told me I was exhausting. That being with me was like a job interview that never ended. That I turned everything into a competition because I didn't know how to just let a thing be nice. Her jaw tightened. And the worst part is he wasn't entirely wrong. I do turn everything into a competition. I turned you into a competition. But it wasn't because I didn't know how to let it be nice. It was because a competition was the only frame I had where being near you every day made sense. Where I got to pay attention to you as much as I wanted and call it strategy. He was wrong about the exhausting part, I said. For the record. She glanced up. You're not exhausting. You're the only thing in that building that isn't. Everything else is easy and forgettable, and you're the one thing I have to actually show up for. I shook my head. I used to dread the days you were out sick. The job got boring. I told myself I missed having competition. That was the folder story. It was never really about competition. Nora put her glass down. Say the coffee thing again, she said. The note. From 8 months ago. You take your coffee black until a deadline, then you load it with sugar like you're bracing for war. You noticed that 8 months ago. I noticed it 2 years ago. I wrote it down 8 months ago. It took me 16 months to admit I was keeping notes. She laughed, wet and disbelieving, and dragged the back of her hand across her eyes. We are so stupid. We're supposed to be the smart ones. Diane pays us to be perceptive. And we spent 2 years being the least perceptive people in Ohio about the one thing that mattered. So we don't waste the next 2. She looked at me, and whatever she saw in my face made her set down her glass and lean across the small space between the stools and kiss me again. Softer this time, no bet behind it, no shot to hide inside. Just a choice made plainly in the low light of a closing bar. Monday was harder than either of us expected. We'd agreed at Sully's to keep it quiet, partly because it was new and fragile, and neither of us wanted the whole floor watching it grow. Partly because we were both, underneath the strategy and the sharp edges, a little scared it would evaporate in daylight, that the thing that was true in a dark pool hall might not survive fluorescent lighting and a Monday meeting. It survived, but it wasn't easy. The problem was that our entire working relationship had been built out of conflict. We didn't have another mode. So we came in Monday morning determined to act normal. And normal for us meant sniping at each other across the meeting table. And now every snipe had a second meaning underneath it, and we both knew it, and it was excruciating. I still think the Ashford tagline needs work, Nora said in the 10 o'clock, not looking at me. The tagline is fine. The tagline is safe. Those aren't the same thing. She said it flat, professional, the exact words she'd have used 2 weeks ago, except she'd told me almost that identical line at Sully's about the Harlan pitch. We lost because the world's got terrible taste, not because we were bad. Tia, and now I couldn't hear her critique the tagline without hearing the other thing underneath it, and I had to look down at my notes so the whole table wouldn't see my face do something unprofessional. Diane noticed. Diane noticed everything. That was her job. She caught me after the meeting in the hallway by the coffee machine and said, "You two are quiet. We lost the Harlan pitch. We're regrouping. You're not quiet like people who lost a pitch." She studied me over the rim of her mug. Diane was in her 50s, silver-haired, and had run creative departments for longer than I'd been alive. She could read a room the way Nora read a pool table. You're quiet like people who are being careful. I've watched you two argue for 2 years, Marcus. You've never once been careful with each other. It was the best thing about your work. We're fine. We'll see, Diane said, and walked off. And I stood there holding a paper cup and thinking that everyone in my life apparently spoke the same maddening language. The hardest part came in the second week, and it had a name, and the name was Cole. Cole was Nora's ex, the one from the bar, the one who'd called her exhausting. I didn't know that when he showed up. All I knew was that on a Tuesday afternoon, a man in an expensive coat walked into our office to pitch a partnership deal from his agency across town, and that Nora went very still at her desk when she saw him. Still in the way she'd gone, still the night she saw the impossible shot. Except this was the opposite of that stillness. This was armor slamming down so hard I heard it from across the floor. Nora. Cole smiled at her like they were old friends. He had a good smile. I disliked it immediately, and then disliked myself for how immediately. You look great. This is a great space. You landed on your feet. Cole. Her voice was perfectly flat. Client services flat. You're here for the 2 o'clock. I'm here for the 2 o'clock. He looked around the office with the easy proprietary air of a man who assumed rooms belonged to him. His eyes landed on me. And you are? Marcus Hale. I stood, shook his hand, kept it professional, because that's the job. Senior strategist. I'll be sitting in. Great, great. He turned back to Nora and lowered his voice, but not enough. I don't think he cared whether I heard. Hey, listen, before we start. No hard feelings, right? The way things ended. We were both, it was a lot. I've grown up a bit since then. The smile again. You seeing anyone? I watched Nora's hand tighten on her pen. I watched her open her mouth to give him some flat professional non-answer. That's not really appropriate for the 2 o'clock. T and I watched in real time the cost of it. The way she folded herself smaller, went careful, let him make her feel like the thing to manage in her own office. And I thought about the scorecard. All those blue tallies. All those years of making herself smaller so she couldn't lose. She is, actually, I said. The room went quiet. Nora's head came up. Sorry, I said, mild professional, meeting Cole's eyes without heat. I know it's not appropriate for the 2 o'clock. But you asked her in her own office in front of her colleague. So I figured appropriate had already left the building. She's seeing someone. Should we talk about the partnership deal? Cole looked between us, and the good smile flickered, and I watched him do the math and get the answer. Sure, he said, recovering. Sure. Let's talk business. The 2 o'clock was fine. The deal wasn't right for us and we passed on it, and Cole left, and I spent the rest of the afternoon certain I'd overstepped, that I'd made a decision that was hers to make, spoken for her the way he used to, done the exact thing I'd sworn I wouldn't. She found me in the stairwell at the end of the day. You spoke for me, she said. I know. I'm sorry. It wasn't Marcus. She was standing on the step above me, which put us almost eye to eye, and her face wasn't angry. It was something I didn't have a name for yet. Do you know what he did? When we were together, when someone asked me a question, he answered it. For me. Every time. He decided he knew what I meant better than I did. She swallowed. For 2 years, I've been so scared of being with someone who does that again that I turned myself into a person who couldn't be spoken for because she never said anything real out loud in the first place. I did the thing he did. I know. No. She shook her head. He answered for me because he thought I couldn't. You answered for me because you could see I didn't want to, and you took the hit so I wouldn't have to. Those are not the same thing. Her voice went unsteady. He made me smaller. You stepped in front of the thing. Nobody's ever stepped in front of the thing for me. I didn't know what to say. You could have asked me first, she said. Next time, ask me first. But, thank you, for seeing I didn't want to answer, and for not letting him make me feel like I had to. She reached out and straightened my collar, that small gesture, bare fingers against my throat, and I understood it was the same one from the notebook, the same category as the good chair by the window. You keep doing that, she said quietly, seeing the thing before I say it. You've been doing it for 2 years. I put it in the scorecard and told myself it was intel. It was never intel. No, she almost smiled. It was never intel. We stood in the stairwell a while longer, close, not saying anything, the building emptying out around us. And I thought, this is the part he never got to, the part after the armor comes down. The part where she lets you see her decide to trust you, which was braver than any impossible shot and cost her more. It came out for real 3 weeks later, and not the way we planned, because these things never do. We were working late on the Ashford rebuild. The two of us, alone in the conference room, the account we'd argued over now, the account we were saving together. It was nearly 9. We'd been at it for hours, and somewhere around the 6th revision the professional distance had worn through, the way it always did when it was just us. And Nora had her shoes off, and her feet tucked under her in the chair, and I'd stopped pretending. I wasn't watching her think. This is better, she said, scrolling through the deck. This is so much better than what we pitched Harlan. We're better when we stop trying to beat each other. It's infuriating. You said that at Sully's. I say a lot of true things at Sully's. It's the only place I let myself. She looked up. The overhead lights were off. We'd been working by the glow of the monitor and the city coming through the windows, and it made the whole room feel like a secret. Come here. Look at this transition. I came around the table to look over her shoulder, and I put my hand on the back of her chair, and she leaned back into it without thinking, her shoulder against my arm, easy and unguarded, the way she only ever was when the armor was off. And the conference room door opened, and Diane walked in. We sprang apart like teenagers. It was not subtle. Nora nearly went over sideways in the chair. I knocked a stack of printouts off the table. Diane stood in the doorway with her reading glasses pushed up into her hair, taking in the dark room, the two of us, the guilty scramble, and I watched her put it together in about a second and a half. Well, Diane said. Diane, I started. Don't. She held up a hand. But she wasn't angry. That was the thing I hadn't expected. Her mouth was doing something complicated, trying not to smile and mostly failing. How long? Nora, who had recovered her composure faster than I had, sat up straight. 3 weeks. We were going to disclose it. We just wanted to be sure it was. She glanced at me. Real. 3 weeks. Diane came in and sat on the edge of the table, and the not smile finally won. You know, I've had a bet running with the CFO for a year and a half. We both stared at her. On the two of you, she clarified. She said you actually hated each other. I said nobody argues about a comma for 40 minutes unless they're avoiding something. She looked immensely satisfied. I'm going to enjoy telling her. Now, you'll fill out the disclosure form with HR, you'll keep it clean in the office, and you will not, under any circumstances, stop arguing in meetings, because your arguing is worth about a third of this department's best work. And I am not losing it because you two got soft on each other. Are we clear? I looked at Nora. She was pressing the back of her hand to her mouth. We're clear. Good. Diane stood, straightened her glasses back down onto her nose, and headed for the door. She paused with her hand on the frame. The Ashford deck is excellent, by the way. Best thing either of you has done. Turns out you do better work when you're not busy pretending. And she was gone. Nora lowered her hand from her mouth. She was laughing silently, her shoulders shaking. She had a bet running. Everybody in this building has a bet running. It's a marketing firm. We're all degenerate gamblers with good vocabularies. You're one to talk. You have a folder. You have a color-coded scorecard. Which reminds me. She stood, tugged her shoes back on, and there was something new in her face. A lightness I'd never seen at work, only ever glimpsed across a pool table. I want to show you something. Come on. She led me back to her desk. The office was empty now, the whole floor dark except the safety lights, the city glittering beyond the windows. She crouched down, opened the bottom drawer, dug under a stack of client folders, and came up with a slim spiral notebook, the cheap kind, corners soft from handling. The scorecard, she said. She held it out, then pulled it back. You laugh, I put you back on the rival list. I won't laugh. She handed it over. It was exactly what she'd described, and somehow worse. Worse in the way that broke my heart a little, in the best way. Page after page of dates and accounts and initials, and NV wins and losses tallied in two colors. The green ones, real. The blue ones, there were so many blue ones, were the games she'd thrown. But it was the margins that got me. Because Nora, who color-coded everything, hadn't been able to help herself. And next to the tallies were notes. Tiny ones. MH stayed late to fix the Delacroix files. Didn't tell anyone. MH remembered my mother was sick. Asked MH gave me the good chair by the window when he thought I didn't notice. You wrote down the chair, I said. I wrote down the chair. Nora. I turned another page. This isn't a scorecard. This is, I didn't have the word. I know what it is. She took the notebook back gently and held it against her chest. I've known for a while what it is. I just needed you to sink a shot first. She smiled, small and true. Or I needed to sink one. I get confused about which of us was the coward. Both of us. Diane confirmed it. It's official. She laughed and pressed the back of her hand to her mouth, and this time I reached out and drew her hand gently down because I didn't want her hiding it anymore. Not the laugh, not any of it. Don't, I said. I like it. The hand thing. Note 8 months ago, remember. Her eyes went soft. She stepped into me, notebook and all, and I wrapped my arms around her in the dark, empty office. And for a while we just stood there, two people who'd spent 2 years fighting because it was the only way they knew to stand close. We're going to be insufferable, she murmured into my shoulder. We're already insufferable. We're just going to be insufferable. Together now. Diane's going to make us keep arguing in meetings. Diane's a genius and I'd die for her. Nora laughed again and didn't hide it. And the sound of it in the empty office was better than winning anything. We told the floor a week later, mostly because keeping it secret had become impossible when we could no longer summon the will to be genuinely mean to each other in meetings. The disagreements were still there. Diane got her wish, we never did stop arguing about the work, but the venom was gone, and everyone noticed, and the CFO paid Diane $40 in the break room in front of witnesses. Reuben, the night janitor, was the first person outside the department we told, because Nora insisted. He shook my hand very seriously and told me Nora had been asking about his daughter's recitals for 3 years, and that anybody that good to a person's kid was good enough for her. And I decided on the spot that Reuben's opinion mattered more than anyone's in the building. We won the Ashford account outright, not against each other for once, but together, the two of us in a pitch room finally pointed the same direction. Diane watched us do it from the back of the room with the expression of a woman collecting on a long bet, and we kept going to Sully's. That part didn't change. Gus kept the terrible beer coming and pretended not to watch us. We played pool most Thursdays, and here is the thing I learned, the thing that mattered more than any of it. Nora stopped throwing games. She beat me most nights, fair and square, because she was better than me and always had been, and it turned out that once she didn't need to keep it close to keep me at the table, she didn't want to. She wanted to win. She wanted me to know she could. And I found that I didn't mind losing to her at all, that watching her line up a shot with her whole sharp, brilliant mind turned on full, holding nothing back, was worth every game. About a year after that first Thursday, we were at Sully's, and I was down 4-1, and I leaned over the table for a shot I had no business making. The 8-ball tucked near the rail, the cue ball trapped behind a cluster, no clean line. The exact shot she'd made the night everything changed. I'd been practicing it in secret for 2 months. I don't know if she knew. I like to think she didn't. New stakes, I said. Nora looked up from her beer, and I watched her recognize it. The shot, the words, the whole shape of the thing. Her hand went to her mouth. "You can't change the stakes mid-game," she said, but her voice had gone unsteady. "I can if you agree." She set her beer down very carefully. "Okay. What are the new stakes?" I looked at the impossible shot, then back at her. There was a small velvet box in my jacket pocket that had been there for a week while I waited for the nerve, and it turned out the nerve came the same way hers had. Dressed up as a bet, hidden inside a shot, because we were the same kind of coward and always would be, and that was all right. "If I sink this," I said, "you have to marry me." The room went very still. She stared at me. Gus, at the far end of the bar, went abruptly and diplomatically deaf. The jukebox hummed between songs. "That's not a real bet," Nora said, and her voice cracked right down the middle. "That shot's impossible. You'll miss." "Probably," I said. "So it's a safe bet for me. I lose nothing." Or I said, "It's the only bet I've had the nerve to make in a year." And I took the shot. I'd love to tell you I sank it. I'd love to tell you the cue ball threaded the cluster and doubled off the rail and dropped the 8 like a door closing. That I matched her impossible shot with one of my own. That the universe rewarded 2 years of cowardice and 1 year of courage with a perfect ending. I missed. I missed by a mile. The cue ball caught the cluster wrong and scattered everything, and the 8 ball didn't go anywhere near the pocket. And I stood there having just proposed and whiffed, and for one horrible second the whole thing hung in the air. Then Nora started laughing, really laughing, the back of her hand flying up to her mouth, tears standing in her eyes, and she came around the table and grabbed the front of my shirt the way she had that first night, and she said, "You missed. You absolute disaster. You can't even propose without turning it into a competition." And I said, "Is that a no?" And she said, "It's a yes. Obviously it's a yes. I've been keeping a scorecard for 3 years, Marcus. I ran out of colors." And she kissed me, in the back of Sully's, under the gold light, with the 8 ball sitting in the middle of the table where it had no business being. And I understood then that we'd never needed the shot to go in. That had always been the difference between us. She thought you had to earn the thing by sinking the impossible shot. I'd finally figured out you just had to be brave enough to take it in front of the person and let them see you miss and find out they loved you anyway. We got married the next spring. Diane gave a toast. The CFO tried to start a betting pool on how long it would last, and Diane shut her down, which from Diane was practically a benediction. Reuben came and danced with Nora's mother, who had gotten well and cried more than anyone. Gus closed Sully's for the afternoon and let us have the pool tables, and at the reception Nora beat me 4 games to 1 in her wedding dress and threw not a single one. She keeps the scorecard still. It's in a drawer at home now instead of at the office. She doesn't tally accounts in it anymore. She writes down other things. The day I remembered her mother's birthday before she did. The night I fixed the leaking sink at 2 in the morning and didn't mention it. Small, stupid, tender things, in blue and green, in her own private code. Sometimes I catch her writing in it and she covers the page and says, "It's competitive intelligence." And I say, "We're married, there's no competition, T." And she looks at me over the top of that soft cornered notebook with the old tilt of her head, the one that took me 2 years to understand. And she says, "We'll see. What would you have done if your office rival, the person you'd been fighting with for years, leaned over a pool table and bet you a kiss on a shot they couldn't possibly make? Would you have called it a joke and gone home? Or would you have finally admitted what the fighting was really about? Have you ever spent years being awful to someone because being awful was the only way you knew how to stay close? Tell me your story in the comments. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.